The US are looking to sign an interim deal before the 9th of July deadline ends. An American delegation led by Assistant US Trade Representative Brendan Lynchs is in India for talks. India is reportedly seeking an exemption from the 10% baseline tariffs and 16% additional tariffs as part of the deal. The two countries are aiming to double bilateral trade to $500 billion. So what could be the possible outcome of talks? To discuss the outlook, joining us right now is Nisha Biswal, partner at the Asia Group and former Assistant Secretary of the State Department. Thank you very much for joining us, Nisha, on the program. Let me begin by asking you, those negotiations are going on. They're very hectic, very intense. But do you feel that India can get an exemption from the 10% baseline tariff and 16% additional tariff as part of any interim deal before the 9th of July?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. And thank you, Parikshitl. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Look, I know that there's a very intense activity going on in trying to come to agreement on the Phase 1A portion of the trade deal, which would really focus on the tariffs. And certainly from India's perspective, trying to gain exemptions on the 10%. As well as the 16% is important. But also, if you look at what the agreement has been, for example, with the US, UK, the 10% tariff seems to be one that the administration is keen to keep as an across-the-board tariff. So let's see where the negotiations come out. I think there's a lot of scope for dealing with the reciprocal tariffs. I'm not sure there is on the 10% across-the-board tariff.
Right. Nisha, Brendan Lynchs and his delegation were supposed to be here for about 2 or 3 days, but the trip was extended to this week till about 10th, that is till Tuesday. Why do you think that extension may have happened? Do you think things are moving positively in terms of having an early deal, or is this because there's still a lot more to be done?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably both, right? I think that clearly both the United States and India have signaled that they intend to conclude an agreement in principle in time for the July 9th deadline on the 90-day suspension. That has been a priority from the very top of both governments. And so for Brendan and his team, as they get down to the crux of the matter, that's where some of the tough technical discussions are going to be, and where it may warrant that you need to extend those in-person discussions to try to meet the deadlines that both governments have set for themselves.
Nisha, we've been hearing from the sources in the Indian government, and what they say that India wants certain sectors that are important for Indian exporters, such as textiles, to go back to tariffs that existed before the 2nd of April, or Indian exports from labor-intensive sectors should get preferential treatment over US's other allies, such as Vietnam for that matter. How much of this ask is possible?
Well, I mean, I think on textiles, India has a really strong case to make, and certainly as you look at the tariffs that are imposed on the other textile manufacturers, India is trying to position itself to be able to advantage its own industry to access that market. And I think that is something where there's going to be some possibility. There is a textile industry in the United States, and there is going to be some desire from the United States to see how much it can try to balance and protect what it's trying to do on the domestic side against what is clearly a really important sourcing for U.S. Retail brands to be able to source from India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, etc. I think that there's an opportunity here for India. So let's see if there's some accommodation made for Indian textile.
Right. Nisha, what I would also like to ask you, going by the negotiations and the template of deals with EU and UK, what do you think the US would want from India as part of the interim deal?
India is clearly, trying to get the Indian side on tariffs as we look at US-India trade opportunities, India has a higher rate of tariffs. And so the U.S. is looking to see that India reduces its tariffs commensurately, particularly in some areas where U.S. products have had difficulty in the agricultural sector. I know that there are certain products that are sensitive for India, but there are many other products where I think the Indian side can accommodate. Non-tariff barriers are also a major area of focus. While we may not get agreement on non-tariff barriers in the initial phase 1A, that will be another area where the U.S. side is going to be looking for significant movement from the Indian side across many different sectors, whether it's in the pharmaceutical and health sciences side, whether it's in the digital side and the financial sector. So I think that the list of non-tariff barriers is going to be a pretty strong point of negotiation as we move forward.
Any point in non-tariff barriers, Nisha, where you believe there are very hard negotiations ongoing at this juncture, where US would definitely want an early reprieve from India?
I do believe that this is a major area of discussion. It is certainly one where U.S. companies have voiced their opinion. This has been long-standing issues, many of which, as India becomes more and more the consequential destination for U.S. investment, those non-tariff barriers are going to be key to the outcome of a trade deal, not only on the tariff side, but a more enduring trade deal that goes beyond just the initial tariff negotiations.
Right. Also, how do you read Howard Lutnick's remarks from last week when he was speaking at the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum? He said that India needs to stop buying Russian oil and defense equipment. Do you expect the United States to link this to the interim deal? Probably tell India that if you want an interim deal, then you must give us some guarantees on stopping purchase of Russian equipment and oil?
Look, I think that as U.S. LNG becomes more and more available, there will be an expectation on the U.S. side that India is going to start to manage its sourcing trends and look more to the United States for its energy. That doesn't mean that we're looking for a curtailment of its imports from other sources, but I think there's an expectation that India will look more to its trusted partner in the United States for meeting its energy needs. In terms of defense equipment, we've seen a trajectory of deepening security ties between the United States and India. U.S.-India defense trade has increased dramatically. India continues to have residual trade in security with Russia, some of which is problematic for the United States as we look to more deepening ties and more advanced and emerging technologies, defense technologies. So that is something that both sides are going to continue to have to navigate. We, I think, on the U.S. side have been understanding of the legacy footprint that Russia occupies in the security partnership and have sought to try to manage and accommodate that. But I think increasingly, as we look at more advanced technology, we're going to need to be careful about that.
Right. On Donald Trump's threat to Apple, do you expect Apple to change their outlook on Indian manufacturing, on making in India for the United States?
I think Apple, is going to look carefully to see how it manages its supply chains. There's not really an economic scope to move and onshore all of the iPhone supply chain into the United States. But I think certainly Apple, as with every company, is looking carefully to see how it balances what its supply chains inside the United States and what its global supply chains are. So I'm sure that is a area of ongoing discussion between Apple executives and the Trump administration. India is a very important component of the global supply chain and a growing one and a trusted one. So I do expect that some some arrangement, accommodation will be made to include India in that global manufacturing supply chain for iPhones and other electronics.
You know, whole of last week, Nisha, we saw a very terrible public feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. How do you think that's going to impact Elon Musk's plans to enter India, both with Starlink and also with Tesla?
I mean, look, I think that certainly there's been a lot of attention to that dynamic. I don't know that it's going to necessarily reflect in the companies that Mr. Musk owns and operates in terms of Tesla, Starlink, and others. I think that SpaceX, et cetera. I think that these are global companies, and they will continue to transact important deals around the world. I don't think it's an exposure either for India or for Tesla and Starlink, though certainly managing the relationship with the administration is something that that Elon Musk is going to have to think hard about because of the extraordinary impact that the administration has on its operations in the United States, its government contracts, et cetera.
Do you expect Donald Trump and the Trump administration to crack down on Elon Musk or probably create policies that are going to hurt his businesses?
I think that there is work going on behind the scenes to bring this disagreement into a more manageable space, and I think you're going to continue to see things quieting down on that front.
Right. I would also like to ask you about the anti-immigration stance of Donald Trump and the kind of protest that we are seeing against Donald Trump's policies. Donald Trump's use of the National Guard has come under heavy criticism from the Democrats. How do you think this leaves the United States and its image as a place where people come to work, come to make a life, or even to study?
Well, I certainly think that seeing chaos and uncertainty on the immigration front does not help the U.S. global brand. I certainly heard from many in India on my recent visit their anxiety about traveling to the United States, about sending their children to study in the United States. And I am hoping that we can get to a better place on immigration and that we can have some calm and deliberate discussions about what is sustainable for the United States.
Right. And Nisha, my final question to you would be about the mood on India. Considering there is a lot of trade uncertainty globally, India and US are working out a trade deal, and possibly we'll have a full deal by the time Donald Trump comes to India. Having said that, the companies that you have been interacting with, are they keen to diversify, increase manufacturing operations, invest more in India, or are the next 3 to 4 years going to be about consolidation and not investing more in India?
Well, I do think that companies across the United States and around the world are very much looking at India, not only through the lens of a China plus one strategy, but really thinking about kind of the future economy. Where is the future growth going to come from? What are the markets that they need to be present in? And in all of those areas, India certainly rises to the top. So I expect that investment in India, expansion plans into India, manufacturing in India are all going to continue to increase apace. Where there is perhaps some flexibility is in the pace with which that investment comes in, and that's going to be dependent on a couple of different factors. It's going to rely on the extent to which the government of India is moving aggressively to create the conditions for that inbound investment, the extent to which there is talent and skilled workforce, highly skilled labor that is going to be required for many of the more advanced manufacturing opportunities that we see in the future. And that means, how is the education system in India going to expand to create the labor force that is necessary? How is the regulatory environment going to allow that investment to come in? including in non-financial sectors, including in land and labor policies. But I do think that irrespective, that the pace is always going to be moving in a positive direction towards India in the coming years.
All right, so the story on India will always be positive. Thank you very much for joining us, Nisha Biswal, for a comprehensive view on the Indo-US trade negotiations and what we can possibly expect in the next few days as well. We are going to move on and get you more